The October 19th, 2023 hearing for the Planning and Land Development Regulation Commission is now called to order. And if I could have everyone please silence any audible devices that you may have. And if you would, join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us this morning. And if I could get Ms. Tucker to please call the roll.
Good morning. Member Craig? Present. For the record, that was present. Member Bender is out absent today. Member Shelley? Here. Member Costa?
Here.
Member Patterson?
Here.
Member Sixma?
Here.
And Chair Mills.
Here. Thank you, Ms. Tucker. And we do have some minutes from the September 21st, 2023 meeting. If anyone, any comments on those minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, I've got a motion to approve the minutes from September 21st, 2023 from Ms. Shelley and a second from Mr. Sixma. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay. If anyone would like to speak for or against any of the cases being heard today, there are some forms at the back of the dais here. If you just fill those out, one out and hand to Ms. Tucker to my immediate left, and we will be listening to your comments, and we will be limiting you to a 3-minute time limit. After the comments have been heard, I will give the applicant an opportunity to address any concerns the speakers have and answer any questions the commissioners may have. And at this time, I would like to turn it over to Mr. Soria for legal comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is for members of the public and for the applicants that decisions by this body on special exception cases and cases which rezone real property from one classification to another pursuant to the zoning ordinances are recommendations only to the county council, and they do not constitute a final hearing. So new evidence may be introduced at the county council public hearing. However, decisions on variances made by this body constitute final action subject to an appeal to county council. And what this means is that no new evidence may be presented at the time of the county council public hearing on the appeal. An aggrieved party that appeals such a decision is confined to the record made before this body. Hearings by this body on rezonings, special exceptions, and variances are quasi-judicial in nature, meaning that this body is acting more like a court and must take into account all oral, written, or demonstrative evidence presented. Their decisions on these cases must be based on competent substantial evidence on the record, and competent substantial evidence has been defined as that evidence a reasonable mind would accept to support a conclusion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Soria. While we're on legal comments, I'd like to ask the commission to disclose for the record any ex parte communications that have occurred before or during the public hearing at which a vote is to be taken on any quasi-judicial matter. And I'll start to my immediate right with Ms. Craig.
None. None.
None.
None. I have none either, but I do need to disclose for the case of being transparent on case V23071. The applicant is my ex-son-in-law, which will have no bearing on my decision. I did consult with legal about it, if there be a conflict, and there is no conflict. Correct, Mr. Sawyer?
Yes, ex-son-in-law is not one of the relatives for which you have a voting conflict. A current son-in-law would, but I'm not going to get into the reasons why.
Okay. Okay. We're going to move on then. Okay. Let me see here. Okay. We do have some items to be continued. Is that Ms. Smith? Would you like to comment on that, Ms. Smith?
Yes, sir. S23006, which is a Chemcho non-exempt excavation, will be continued to November 16th. There was an error on the due public notice form. It was mailed to the correct addresses, but the information on the property was incorrect. So we need to redo that notice, so it will be continued.
Okay. Any discussion on this request? Okay. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll move that item number S-23-006 be continued until the November 16th PLDRC meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, I've got a motion on the floor from Ms. Shelley to continue case S-23-006 to the November 16th, 2023 meeting, and a second from Mr. Costa. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we do have some unfinished old business. And Ms. Shelley, could I get you to read the first one of that case in the record, please?
Yes, sir. Case number V-23-060, variances to the minimum yard requirements on prime agriculture A1 zoned property.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. And this would be Mr. Hanson.
Good morning, Michael Hanson, Planning Development Service. This particular variance application has 3 requests, and it stems from the applicants purchasing the property with structures already developed on it. Variance 1 and 2 relate to the existing mobile home dwelling in the southwest corner of the property. It has an attached deck. Variance 1 would reduce that from side yard setback on the west side from 50 feet down to 28 feet, where variance 2 would reduce that 50-foot required rear yard from 50 to 48 feet. Variance 3 to the north of that is for an existing structure that's labeled as a carport on the survey. It reduces the side yard from 50 to 35 feet. That carport is actually more likely should be classified as a livestock shelter, as it's used by the applicants to support their agricultural animals that they have on the property. Ultimately, these structures were built by a previous owner when the property had an agricultural classification from the property appraiser's office. The mobile home was used as an agricultural office. It's now being used as a residence, so it's going through process within the county for a change of use to allow that. However, it's subject to the zoning code for the setbacks, and that's why we have variance 1 and 2. Variance 3 is because that agricultural classification expired. The applicants are planning on renewing that agricultural classification with the property appraisers when the window for applications open in January of this coming year. We have on this one a recommendation for approval for all 3 variants. I'm available for any questions the board may have.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Any questions for staff? Is the applicant present? Okay, seeing that the applicant is not present, do we have any comments for this case?
No, sir.
All right, we're going to close the floor for public participation and open it up for commission discussion or motion.
I'll be glad to make a motion.
Good. Yes, Ms. Shelley?
I move that we approve case number V-23-060, variances 1 through 3, as they successfully meet 5 of the 5 criteria.
I've got a motion on the floor from Ms. Shelley to approve variances 1, 2, and 3, variance V-23-060. In a second from Mr. Sixma. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Could get to the next case, Ms. Shelley.
Yes, sir. Case number V-23-070, a variance to separate non-conforming lots on rural agriculture A2 zoned property.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. Ms. Smith, this one is yours.
Yes, sir. This is a variance to separate non-conforming lots. The applicant has been assembling a variety of tax deed parcels and other parcels to build a single-family home. As of the application date, 2.55 acres have been assembled. The zoning ordinance requires 5 acres. It is situated in the Blue Springs Priority Focus Area. When the applicant applied for a lot combination to combine 7 of the parcels, they were required to submit a non-conforming lot letter, and that letter confirmed common ownership with an adjacent parcel to the south. This was coming to you last month. However, the owner asked for the opportunity to talk with that owner to see if she could assemble that parcel as well. To our knowledge, that sale has not occurred, but based on the 5 criteria, we would recommend denial of the variance because we would like to see 5 acres assembled. and we would recommend that they assemble the 5 acres first or consider rezoning to a different classification that would allow 2.5 acres, which is RA.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Smith. Any question for staff? Hearing none, is the applicant present? Could I get your name and address for the record, sir?
Good morning, Nathan Maloon, 1990 West New Haven Avenue, second floor, Melbourne, Florida. And then I have with me Miss Jan Petro.
Okay. And your address?
1320 Braddock Road, Deltona, Florida, 32725.
Okay, you've heard the staff report. Is there something you'd like to add to that?
We do. We have a presentation that we've have up on the screen for you. And then if we could go to the next slide. So the development order was issued pending the variance, and then there was also a second condition entitling the properties in the same owner. There's some that are owned individually by my clients and some that are owned in trust, and we do plan. That's a pretty simple process to ensure that those are titled in the same entity or name. But we will do that. The other one was to do this here today, and the county is acting as both a sword and a shield, saying, hey, do this, but no, we don't think you can apply for this. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. The 5 criteria, the first one, special conditions and circumstances exist. The county code only allows single-family development with over 5 acres, but if this application for a variance is denied, it will not allow my clients to build their single-family home on the property and will make it worthless. The properties in this area are subdivided into these smaller parcels, as you saw on the staff report. And the common ownership arose many years ago and was prior to my clients buying any parcels, and the common ownership is not a result of my client's actions. This next slide, please. The literal interpretation of the zoning ordinance will deprive my clients of the rights enjoyed by others in the area. And specifically last year in the same zoning district on 2145 Hamilton Avenue, there was a home built with less than 5 acres that also had previous common ownership. And I would point this board to the case that I have cited at the bottom of the slide, Dade County versus Florida Mining and Materials Corp., which stands for the proposition that denying a variance would be arbitrary and unreasonable if a similar activity is granted on nearby tracts. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. There is no reasonable use that can be made of the property. The only use that can be made is for the single-family residential use, which is what my client wants to use it for. And since the application was made, my client has purchased another acre of property, bringing it up to just north of 3.5 acres. However, that sale, while the deed has been recorded in the official records, it has not yet been updated in the property appraiser site, because they're normally a little bit behind. And the next slide, please. The variance is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of the land. It will allow my client to build their forever home with their adequate square footage and utilizing their property to the fullest. All of the land would be combined, and it wouldn't be parceled out or subdivided in the future. And my client would be happy to do a deed restriction or something to that extent as well. And then finally, the last slide, consistency with the general intent and purpose of the zoning ordinance. A variance would allow my clients to bring a newer and more efficient home to the area. And granting this variance would promote the public health, safety, morals, and the general welfare of Volusia County. And it would also preserve the character, appearance, and aesthetic qualities of Volusia County and allow someone to build their forever home in this area. And I know my client would like to speak as well, and then I'll have a few questions of her to kind of elicit some testimony.
Good morning. Myself and my husband stand before you this morning to plead for an approval to separate these 2 parcels. With the denial, we will be left with nothing. All of our savings went into purchasing these properties to one day build our family's home, which will be useless if we are denied. Please take into consideration that I have purchased all parcels around me that I could in the last 2 years. Thank you.
I have a few questions. You didn't cause the common ownership prior to your ownership of the property?
I did not.
Okay. If this variance is denied, will you be able to build a single-family home on the property?
Yes.
What would the property be worth to you if you're not able to build a single-family home?
Nothing, useless. I can't use it at all.
What happened on 2145 Hamilton Avenue?
A house was built last year with the same tax ease ownership that they're saying I'm attached to.
And do they own 5 acres?
They are at, I think, right at an acre or less.
Are you able to make any reasonable use of the property?
No.
Is this the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of the land?
Correct, it is.
Okay. And is this consistent with the general intent and purpose of the zoning ordinance?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I believe we've demonstrated that we meet the 5 elements for a variance. We asked this board to grant the variance so that my client can build their forever home here in Volusia County. And we thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Okay. Let's see if we have any public participation. If we do, I'll give you an opportunity to come back. Do we have any?
No, sir.
Okay, we're going to close the floor for public participation and open up for commission discussion or a motion.
I have a question for staff.
Okay.
Has this always been A2, or was it assigned A2 at some point?
This is an older subdivision that has been A2.
From the beginning?
Yes, sir.
And what's the requirement for RA?
2.5 acres.
2.5 acres? Thank you. Well, so we can discuss, I'll make a motion. I make a motion on case V-23-070 for, let's see, any staff conditions. For approval with no staff conditions.
Do you want to make a condition for them to combine the 1 acre parcel that they've got under contract?
Sure, yeah, we can add that in there, add the additional 1 acre parcel that is currently under contract.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Second? Okay. Okay, I've got a motion from Mr. Casa for case V-23-070 to approve the variance, with a second from Mr. Patterson, with the one condition of, in the event that you do close on the 1 acre parcel, that would have to be combined with the parcel that you have now. That would be done upon the closing. Is that right, Ms. Smith? Mm-hmm. Or Mr. Sawyer, either one?
Well, there is a current application over in land development, and we'll send a note over to them that they would need to include this additional parcel. So it will be done with
They
the
could only do
subdivision.
that if they close on the property, though, correct?
That's correct.
They don't have to,
Come back to us.
yeah, come back to us. Okay. Okay. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, Ms. Shelley, could I get the next case, please?
Yes, sir. Case number V-23-079, variances to the minimum yard requirements on transitional A4 agriculture zoned property.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. Ms. Smith, this one is also yours.
Yes, sir. Applicant wants to build a 1,050 square foot accessory structure on the northeast corner of his property. It's a 2.5 acre site developed with a 4,625 square foot home. The septic system and the well are located on the northwest portion of the property, which would prevent the structure from being sited there. The applicant is wanting to use the existing vegetation in the northeast corner of the parcel to shield the structure from the neighbors, and wants to save some oak trees, which is why they're asking for the variance. Unfortunately, the application doesn't meet all 5 criteria. The structure could be shifted to the south and to the west a little bit to remove it from the setback, so we need to recommend denial. I would like to note that there were 5 signatures supporting the variance that were submitted to the county.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Any questions for staff? Hearing none, is the applicant present? Could I get you to come forward, sir? And could I get your name and address for the record?
Yes, sir. Troy Marlowe, 1180 Winding Oaks Drive, DeLand, Florida, 32720.
Okay, you've heard the staff report on this. Anything you'd like to add?
Yes, sir. I did get those 5 signatures of approval from the neighboring properties in my neighborhood and have submitted them to Ms. Kelly, and I have them here as well.
Yeah, we've got a copy
Okay,
of those.
excellent. And I have also gotten a couple pictures that I submitted to Ms. Kelly as well, just a closer-up view of the overhead of the aerial of the property and a proposed site for where I want the building to go, and another special condition that was not mentioned, which is a now defunct egg processing factory on the property to the east, a smaller building that's falling apart, and it does not meet the setback on his side. And I was hoping to conglomerate the structures all into that corner between my neighbor to the north and my neighbor to the east all have accessory structures in that corner, and pushing it back into that corner further would not only save the aesthetic road frontage for the neighborhood, but also conglomerate those into one smaller area. And additionally, the special conditions for me that I had nothing to do with that structure was there before I bought the property. The property, when I purchased it, was cleared in 3/4 of the property, and there's an easement that runs along the south and west sides of my property that is the road for access for my neighbors, which would allow any other space. My building would technically be in front of my house, and that is the aerial photo. You can see my property is the one at the center above the label Winding Oaks Drive. To the northeast, there you can see the egg factory I'm referring to. That's correct. And to the north is the accessory structures of my neighbor to the north as well, a chicken coop and an outbuilding there as well. And as you can see, the clearing around the west side and the south side of my property does not allow for accessory structure to be placed out there. The oak trees are the largest cluster of oak trees on my property in the northeast corner. And if you would go to the next picture, please. The oak tree on the left side of the picture is one of the ones I'm trying to save, and this is in the winter, so there's not as many branches. You can see the accessory structures on the left side behind that oak tree and through some vegetation on the right side. And this is the proposed location for my structure, and the further tucked back into there it is, the further screened it could be, and being able to save those oak trees would save some of the few oak trees that I have remaining from the property when it was purchased. The privacy of the building would also be greatly improved, as well as my main concern, which is the aesthetic and the natural beauty that I have on the property, and the decreased land value that I have because of these old growth oak trees. The full support by all owners, and the owner to the east is also an absentee owner whose only dwelling is on the 11 acres on the further east side of his property, so on the exact opposite side, furthest away from my proposed structure. So the setbacks of 15 feet would allow me to keep the oak trees I have and would not affect his property, as his dwelling is completely on the other side of his property, and there's accessory structures on that corner. That's all.
Okay, let's see if we have any questions for you. Do we have any questions for the applicant? All right, let's see if we do have any public participation.
Okay.
We do not, so we're going to close the floor for public participation.
Thank you, sir.
For commission discussion.
I'll be glad to make a motion.
Okay,
I move that case number V-23-079 be approved, subject to one staff condition.
Second.
okay, I've got a motion on the floor from Ms. Shelley to approve variance of V-23-079, variance 1 and 2, with the one condition from staff, and a second from Mr. Costa. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Ms. Shelley, could I get the next case, please?
Yes, sir. CPA, case number CPA-23-010, small-scale comprehensive plan amendment from the urban low-intensity ULI future land use designation to the commercial and urban high-intensity designations.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Shelley. And Mr. Shams, this one is yours.
Hi, good morning. Stephen Jams with Volusia County Planning. The applicant is requesting a future land use change from ULI to commercial and UHI to develop the site with a grocery store and adjacent retail, 5 commercial out parcels, a gas station, and 240 multifamily units. This application has an accompanying PUD rezoning. The subject site is in the northwest quadrant of State Road 44 and Kepler Road in DeLand, and is comprised of 8 parcels. 1 parcel is currently developed with a Circle K gas station. That is at the parcel on the intersection of Kepler and 44. The remaining 7 parcels are undeveloped, vegetated, and contain wetlands and surface water bodies. It's also important to note that the westernmost parcel is only a portion of it and not the full parcel extent. And also on the western boundary, there is a 100-foot utility easement running from north to south. The applicant is seeking the future land use change to UHI on 22.48 acres of the property and commercial on 17.74 acres. They're proposing the UHI change, as you can see on the screen, to account for their residential density, and the commercial change for their commercial density. The surrounding area is primarily comprised of residential, neighborhood commercial, and large agricultural parcels. Further south and east along Kepler Road, many residential development projects in the city of DeLand have already been approved. According to the applicant, there are approximately 2,400 approved residential units, which indicates a need for additional commercial uses in this area. The site is within the City of DeLand's 2050 vision plan and is within the urban core, the State Road 44 transit-oriented development corridor, and has also been designated as a possible mixed-use neighborhood center. The site has available utilities from the City of DeLand. In addition, the intersection of State Road 44 and Kepler Road is undergoing a major intersection improvement by the Florida Department of Transportation. They're going to redesign the intersection from a signalized intersection to a roundabout, and this is scheduled to begin construction by mid-2024. The current ULI future land use designation could be developed with 120 single-family units, which would generate approximately 1,200 daily trips. The proposed UHI and commercial future land use designations could develop max density of 249 dwelling units and approximately 425,000 square feet of commercial. This would generate a total of 14,254 daily trips, which is an increase of about 13,339 daily trips. Volusia County Traffic Engineering also reviewed the project and found there are deficiencies in background traffic, and the build-out would result in further deficiencies. But Volusia County Traffic Engineering is coordinating with the applicant on a proportionate fair share agreement for mitigation. In addition, the project also satisfies 7 of the 8 urban sprawl criteria, where only 4 are required, and is also consistent with Volusia County's comprehensive plan policies. Overall, staff recommends forwarding to the County Council with a recommendation of approval, and I'm available for comments or questions.
Ms. Shelley, you had a question?
I have a question for you, Chair. Should I read the next case number? Because I noticed they're going to be presenting these concurrently.
Should we hear both of them, Mr. Salo, at the same time? That way that we don't have to go
Or
back.
do you want me to read the second?
You can. I think you're going to be talking about the same aspect, so you might as well. The only thing is that these are 2 items and they're 2 different standards of recommendations.
Right.
One is a comprehensive plan and therefore does not need competent substantial evidence, and the other is a PUD. It's obviously conditioned on the comprehensive plan, and it needs to be based on competent substantial evidence. So keep that in mind in your head. Try to separate the types of evidence and testimony that you're hearing, but you can hear them together.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and read the second one into the record also and get the staff report on that. Is that how you want to handle that, or will be a?
Is that, I think that would, Stephen, is that an issue?
No issue.
Yes, okay.
Okay, that's what we'll do then. Okay, go ahead and read the second one.
Yes, sir. Case number PUD 23-008. a rezoning from transitional agriculture A3, rural residential RR, and planned unit development with a business subclassification BPUD to a planned unit development PUD.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. Mr. Shams, you want to give us the information on that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So the applicant is requesting a rezoning from A3, RR, and BPUD to a single PUD. The existing BPUD is for Circle K stores, and it will be incorporated into the proposed PUD. So as I said earlier, the applicant is proposing 240 multifamily units, a grocery store with attached retail, 5 out parcels, and a Circle K gas station with 14 pumps. In total, this is approximately 96,907 square feet of commercial uses. There are approximately 10 acres of wetlands and surface waters on the western side of the property, as you can see on your screen. The applicant has agreed to record a conservation easement over the area to ensure it remains undeveloped. This is an exhibit to the development agreement and will be finalized prior to approval of the final development order. The PUD will be developed in 3 phases. Phase 1 includes out parcels 2 and 3, the shopping center, parcel 6, and the out parcel, the Circle K. This phase is anticipated to commence by 2026. Phase 2 will include the multifamily residential parcel 7 on the north side of the property, and this is anticipated to commence by 2027. And finally, Phase 3 will include out parcels 1, 4, and 5. Out parcel 1 being on the southeast corner, and parcels 4 and 5 along the eastern boundary of Kepler Road. And this phase is anticipated to commence by 2028. The project will meet all PUD requirements, including 20% common open space in the residential area. This common open space will be located in the residential area and the natural area pending approval by environmental permitting. The property is within the land's utility service area and will have capacity for all utilities. As mentioned earlier in the previous presentation, it is consistent with the comprehensive plan policies. The proposed PUD's residential and commercial development would result in approximately 13,504 daily trips. And to reiterate, the site is within DeLand's 2050 vision plan for their urban core, 44 TOD corridor, and as a possible neighborhood mixed-use center. Staff believes this will add some much-needed commercial uses and multifamily housing in the DeLand area. And we've recommended the PLDRC forward to County Council with a recommendation of approval. And I'm available for comments or questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shams. Any questions for staff? Okay, I have a few questions here. When you do the comprehensive plan, in our comprehensive plan, we have low density and high density, and this is going to a higher density. When we develop the comprehensive plan, what is the criteria for determining what goes where when we're developing that?
As you know, the comprehensive plan is a policy. So when you amend the comprehensive plan, you take into account, you are guided by the determination of, is it urban sprawl? Right, so, with all the criteria, and then there are exceptions for urban sprawl. But ultimately, it is a policy decision of this commission and of county council. And the question is, in the future, over a prolonged period of time, do you want that type of residential density and that type of use in that area? So that's a policy question, and you are guided by urban sprawl. Is that the type of impacts? Do you want to generate additional impacts, such as impacts on the school system, impacts on the roads, impacts on water, impacts on sewer? If the answer is yes, you can recommend approval. But it doesn't. That decision doesn't translate to how those impacts are going to be mitigated for. Those are done through your concurrency system. But really the decision as a policy is, do you want to increase the density in this particular area? Is this a good location and a good timing for the growth of Volusia County? So that's kind of the fundamental question. It is the question that is being asked to you that has the most amount of discretion because of the way that the Florida statutes have set up the decision-making process on comprehensive plans.
Okay. Where I'm going with this is we've noted that there was a deficiency in the traffic study there to accommodate this. And would that not be a factor in considering urban sprawl?
Well, the urban sprawl analysis is takes into account, so the question you're being asked is, do you want to generate the impacts itself? So if there is a deficient road segment, that is mitigated through the concurrency system, which is set up by a formula provided by the state. But the fundamental decision is, do you want to generate those impacts in the first place? So, you can take into account, okay, do you want to bring the cap up? But the fact that there is a deficient, road can play a part in your analysis in determining whether or not you want to increase the impacts. But just be aware that, the manner of the mitigation is set by concurrency and proportionate fair share. So.
Well, there's already a deficiency that exists today. That's the reason I'm even asking these questions. And yet we get an approval, a recommendation of approval through the staff on this CPA. And that was my question, is how we determine that recommendation of approval, knowing that we do have a deficiency there on the traffic.
A deficiency doesn't mean that you should deny the project. It just means that there's something that the applicant is going to have to mitigate, either pay or construct pursuant to the concurrency system. So that's the kind of factor. And it's just one factor of the overall recommendation of, is this a proper location for Volusia County to increase its density and intensity of the uses? Because if it's a fixable problem, then they fix it by payment of a prop fair share or construction of some roadway improvement.
Do we take into account the projects that are currently approved to the east of this, around the Lake Winnimisset area for the traffic count, and it's going to be on that intersection when we're looking at these deficiencies?
Yes, sir. The applicant will need to do a full TIA, and that will be done during the final site plan. They have gone through that process, and they have an approved methodology in-house. I do think with some of the questions that you're asking, the applicant is present and does have a presentation that I believe will answer a lot of your questions.
Okay. All right. Okay, any other questions for the staff?
Just one quick one. Being that this is the proximity to the land, was the land counciled on this one?
Yes, sir. We sent out an official request to the JCCC, which three of you sit on that. We have not heard back from the city.
Okay.
We have sent them multiple iterations of the plan and have not heard back.
Okay, so there's no feedback from them whatsoever at this point?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, if we have no more questions, is the applicant present? Good morning, Mr. Watts.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Did y'all make it a little bit colder in here? It's a little chilly. For the record,
This fixing to heat up.
for the record, Mark Watts with the law firm of Cobb Cole, 231 North Woodland Boulevard, DeLand. And I've got a number of other folks here with me. John Schwartz and Maya Taylor are here with Redstone Properties. They're the commercial developer that's bringing forth the application. Randy Hudak, which is our project engineer with Zev Cohen and Associates. Jared Stubbs, who is with Kimley Horn. They actually represent Circle K, who's part of the application in front of you. And then, of course, Nika, who's with our office and has done a great deal of the work on this project over the past 3 years. So let me start. I've got a presentation I want to walk through, but I want to give you a little bit of background that we have been working with your staff for about 3 years on this site. And it's gone through a number of different iterations, which I'll kind of talk a little bit about as we look at the slides. really to respond to comments and to some of the changing circumstances here. The fact that the roundabout that's getting ready to begin construction next year, the funding for that was advanced during the course of the time that we've been working on this. When we started, it wasn't funded yet. Now it's been fully funded from, I think, federal and state dollars, and is going to be breaking ground in 2024. So anyway, it's been an interesting project to work on. DeLand is aware, just I think Mike Holmes, before he retired, did provide some comments on the buffering and some of the other layout issues. But I'll talk also a little bit about the 2050 plan, which is the City of DeLand's overriding kind of policy direction of where they are going, where they see the city going, and this is within both their utility service area and the Greater DeLand Act area that was identified in the 70s, to kind of identify where the city of DeLand will ultimately grow to from a planning standpoint. So to start, the overall site is right around 40 acres and change. We're proposing a mix of uses, which I'll talk about in a minute, is really kind of very consistent with what the 2050 plan calls for this location. There's a residential component really that serves as a transition because we're asking to come in and add commercial to the corner. To the north of the overall site, there's a church, and then it transitions to existing developed large lots. And so it felt appropriate to have a transition of residential density. There's also, in general, a continuing deficiency in diverse housing types within the city of DeLand in this area in general. And so this also meets that need. And I think that's your comprehensive plan, as staff has pointed out, supports that. If you look at the various elements of the comprehensive plan that are cited, it supports that diversification of the housing types. We've also focused on open space and preservation. Part of the early discussions with regard to the site, and you'll see this when we look at the layout, you already saw it when Mr. Shams showed you the initial slide that showed the wetland areas that are on the western portion of the site. That's really part of a flowway that accommodates the surface water and waters that kind of flow up the western side of the MLK Beltway, come across 44, and go up to Hammock Lake, ultimately into Blue Lake, and then the Talmadge chain of lakes going north. Ultimately, it goes under 1792 along the east side of the airport and becomes Hall Creek or empties into Hall Creek going north into Flagler County. So we've focused on making sure that is preserved, and that's the conservation easement that you see as part of the PD that we'll be talking about shortly. And then again, as I said before, there was already an approval for Circle K to be reconstructed. That's tied to the fact that they're going to be doing the roundabout there. So there's already a plan to take the existing location down, rebuild it facing 44. So that's now been incorporated into the overall plan for the project. The current future land use is, as indicated, urban low intensity. That allows for a mix of neighborhood commercial uses of 5,000 square feet or less, and also residential density and intensity. And again, Mr. Shams did a great job of kind of walking you through what those current entitlements are. One of the things I wanted to point out with it is that land use has been in place on this location since our comprehensive plan was adopted in about 1990. So that's the length of time that plan or that land use has been in place here. And as most of you are aware, I think, a number of things have changed on the east side of DeLand since 1990. If you think about this location going south across 44 at the time that this comprehensive plan was adopted with the ULI designation, Kepler continued for about 1,500 to 2,500 feet as a dirt road, and MLK did not exist. Everything south of that was the Stewart family cattle ranch. So that is now all Victoria Park and everything that is built up around it. And so circumstances certainly have changed since this original land use was put into place. And I think that's why you see DeLand's long-term planning looking at this and saying this is an appropriate location for some of those uses that will actually help with some of the traffic concerns, and I'll get to that in a minute. So our proposed land use classifications, urban high and commercial. And then, if you heard in the initial staff presentation on the land use, when you look at commercial, there could be 400,000 or 500,000 square feet of development here. The PUD is important because it ties it to a much lower number, about 25% of that number. So it vests it and locks it in at the lower end of that overall range. So here's the current map. Again, this is just showing you where the ULI and kind of the land uses that are in the surrounding area. Zoning is kind of a mix here. You've got PUDs, you've got a number of A3 areas that are on some of that land going up to the north, but to the south you see you've got a lot of residential lands. And I'll show you a broader picture in a minute that will show some of the development that's occurred over time. And it's right there. So I thought it was helpful to go back and kind of look at this side of town. And 2003 was the best one we could find to put into the presentation. If you actually went about 5 years before this from an aerial standpoint, that the star location is the site we're talking about. You can see MLK running to the south. In 2003, that road was about 3 years old. And so you can just see down in the very bottom, I don't know if I can still point on here or not. Anyway, you can start to see Victoria Park developing down there at Orange Camp and MLK. Again, that is in its infancy in this picture here. Since that time, we've had a lot more activity on the east side of DeLand. So you've had all of Victoria Park that's built out. You've got Victoria Reserve that's under construction now. Lakewood Park, which I'll show you some of these with indicators in a minute. And in general, that MLK Beltway has become one of the significant areas of development and residential development in particular in DeLand. In addition to the projects that are already there and built, these are the projects that have been approved and are going through the next level either of construction or engineering and design. So Beersford Reserve, just kind of walking you through here. Beersford Reserve is the redevelopment of the former Sandhill Golf and Country Club. Trinity Gardens is in preliminary plat review now with the City of DeLand. Victoria Reserve, I mentioned, that one is mostly constructed. Lakewood Park, again, they've just received approval for their third and final phase of residential units. Phases 1 and 2 are in and under development. Summit Place Townhomes is on Summit, right across from Daytona State College. That's got a preliminary plat pending for 300 townhome units. That is going to be developed here in the very near future. It's under contract, and again, we're just working through the preliminary plat phase of that. And then Crestwind, which is the Coulter 55-plus project that is on the east side of Lake Winnimisset. The City of DeLand on Monday night approved the preliminary plats for phases 2 and 3 of that project. So it's under development now. If you drive by there, you can see the entry features and everything else are there and in place. So that kind of gives you a summary of the activity that both has occurred and is continuing to occur on the east side of DeLand. Now, I thought it would be helpful to kind of layer in this image because the green stars that I added here represent the current grocery locations throughout DeLand. So when you look at all of the activity that's clustering and happening out on the east side of town, all of those residents, all of those trips currently have to go to the locations that are in these, the green stars. So you've got on the south, you've got the Publix that was developed as part of the DeLand Country Club redevelopment. You've got, let's see, going from bottom to top, the next one is the Walmart Neighborhood Center at the corner of Beersford and Woodland Boulevard. The one on the left out there is the Winn-Dixie at New York and 15A. And then the two that are kind of off the page on the north are the Publix up by the DeLand Airport on ISB and the Walmart that's going north on US 17 towards DeLeon Springs. So the overall concept plan, as we mentioned, and you saw this in the staff presentation, is focused on providing, a shopping opportunity for the residential development that's occurred on the east side of town and that is continuing to occur on the east side of town. The wetland areas and other areas there to the left are the areas that are to be both serve the stormwater function and then also the preservation function under the conservation easement that's required as part of the PD. That's just another view looking at kind of the open space areas and the areas that will be included in that preservation. And then mention the phasing plan. Phase 1 is the areas that you see here in kind of the light pink color. Phase 2 would be the residential area just up on that open space area between the back of what would be a new shopping center and the church that's to the north. And then the additional out parcels that would fill in over time are shown in yellow here. So let me pause there and ask if you have any questions. Actually, let me show you one other map, because this one I noticed wasn't in the materials. Kelly, can I put this up on the overhead? We've made a number of references to the DeLand 2050 plan, but it's not something that you've been involved with necessarily as it was developed. So I thought it'd be helpful to put the map up here as well this morning. Because the way that the DeLand 50 plan organizes the planning for future growth and development of the city, it really looks at things in two ways. If you look on here, there's kind of an orange color and then there's yellow color. That's the colors that correspond to residential density. And the orange color identifies the kind of urban core of DeLand. And those are the areas that the 2050 plan specifies are appropriate for increased residential densities and intensities over time. The city wants to focus growth kind of within that orange core area. And if you look, there's a little purple area. I can't reference on here. I think I can, right? Can I point on here? No. We used to be able to draw on everything. All right. So Kelly, there you go. If you continue out to your right there, you see both a red asterisk and you see that orange area. So this site is within that urban core, in that orange area, right at the intersection of Kepler, MLK, and 44. And the red asterisk indicates the sites that DeLand in this planning process deemed appropriate for mixed-use development nodes. Again, that plan focuses on making sure that there are nodes created that serve the increased densities and intensities throughout the community. So this is the location that long-term planning has identified as appropriate for mixed-use shopping, increased residential densities and intensities. And then that stops going to the east. They've focused on preserving the densities and intensities on the east side of Kepler in the Lake Winnimisset neighborhood. We've actually had numerous meetings with members of the Lake Winnimisset Civic Association through the course of the past 3 years, and also had a neighborhood meeting to try and kind of make sure that everybody was aware of what we were working with and working on. The last thing I'll point out is if you continue out 44 and look at this map, there's kind of that blue circled area around the 44 I-4 interchange. Oh, right there. There you go. That's an employment center. And if you look at the long-term plans and the current zoning that's in place for that area in the city of DeLand, that is an area for corporate offices, employment opportunities, highway commercial development, and a mix of additional residential densities. In fact, that Summit Place townhome that I referenced that's going through preliminary plat review is actually part of the planning that's occurred for that area in particular. So I've said a lot. Let me stop there. And the one thing that I do want to address with regard to concurrency, and I'm sure we'll have some follow-up questions about this, the land use amendment and the PUD do not exempt or seek to exempt us from any of the concurrency requirements. In other words, to your question with regard to traffic, the traffic deficiencies that are noted that exist currently and any deficiencies that are created as a result of project traffic have to be mitigated through that concurrency project, just like any other project. And we're not seeking to create an exemption from that. I will note two things with regard to those existing deficiencies. One, if you look at the specific deficiencies that are noted in your staff report on the comp plan amendment, page 8, there's 4 segments that are identified there. Of those 4 segments, 2 are the constrained sections of 1792 Woodland Boulevard that go through downtown DeLand, where from a policy standpoint, DOT is not going to condemn the commercial shopping center in downtown DeLand to make a wider 1792. And so the focus has been, they've shifted the strategic intermodal system designation from 1792 to 15A to provide for that bypass and providing for alternative, in general, alternative routes for traffic through and around downtown. The other segment that's noted is the area from the intersection here to Summit. And one of the principal issues that's creating that deficiency is the intersection that will be replaced with the roundabout starting this year. And so that particular deficiency is being addressed with the implementation of the roundabout. The other thing that is underway, and actually there's a transaction that will close on Tuesday, where the city of DeLand is dedicating the right-of-way to the county, and the school board is dedicating right-of-way to the county for the Beersford extension, which creates another additional bypass. And that bypass will basically allow traffic to come off of 44 at Summit, where Daytona State College is, and go to South DeLand without coming through the intersection here at MLK and Kepler. Portions of that are under construction now. That right-of-way was actually reserved and deeded to the city as part of the Lakewood Park project approvals and the Victoria Reserve project approvals. So that right-of-way corridor is fully there. It's under design now, and that will be the next thing that begins construction as well. So to the extent we have proportionate share dollars that are generated by this project, by Lakewood Park, by the Crestwind project, they are going to fund those additional improvements coming into the area. So there is both a long-term land use plan here that we're trying to carry out, and this also fits into the long-term transportation planning that's occurring in this area. So with that, I will finally stop talking and see if you have any questions.
Any questions for the applicant? Okay, Mr. Watts, you noted that the area in the orange area was for high density for the city of DeLand. Recently, as a matter of fact, I think it's going to the city commission. Your office actually handled it, Mr. Woods did, on the corner of Taylor and Blue Lake. One of the classifications that they put into their future land use was for low density, and that's what they were applying there. One of the reasons was because of the impact that we're having in that area on the water. I mean, the seasonal high water tables and stuff. So even though it's orange, there are places where the city of DeLand, and they're getting pressure from it also to create lower density areas. That's just a comment I'd like to make. But the other comment I'd like to make is that the commercial designation could be acquired even with the ULI on part of the other portion. Is that not correct?
There's commercial is allowed within ULI, but at a limited footprint. So I believe the limit under ULI is 5,000 square feet. So for example, that existing, you can do a neighborhood commercial, shopping use, but it's limited by the policy to that smaller square footage.
Okay. I think where I'm going with this is you could accommodate the development that is going on there without increasing to the UHI. Am I correct?
You could not accommodate the transitional area behind the shopping center north to the institutional use with the church or the large lots that exist to the north. That's why the UHI was required. Because we can't...
I realize you can't put in the apartments, but you could put in housing. You could still develop it.
You could, yes, you certainly could.
You could.
But looking at the type of development, this is within 1.5 miles of the interchange. It's along 2 arterials. So if you look at the locational criteria for UHI, and that's, again, contained in your staff report, one of the primary goals of that is to provide diversification of housing, particularly at intersections where you've got arterials coming together. And again, taking that in context with the city of DeLand's planning under the 2050 plan, this location being designated as a mixed-use node specifically to combine the uses of housing diversification, higher intensity housing, and shopping. So this is consistent with those planning efforts that have occurred.
From a zoning standpoint, where's the transitional portion from this UHI to the existing ownership to the north of this location now?
By stepping down in intensity, by going from commercial at the corner to UHI, which would be a residential intensity, but at a lower intensity than the commercial, and then transitioning to the ULI and to the agricultural areas to the north along Kepler. So again, it focuses the activity at that intersection node.
In the beholder's eye, that's not a good transition, going from a high density for the townhouses to parcels that have 5 and 10 acre parcels to the north of that. And that's just my
Yeah,
That's
no,
my-
I certainly understand your perspective.
And,
on it.
and I agree with you that we need the commercial development to support the things so people don't travel. But I believe that the commercial development could be accommodated under the ULI to make those accommodations.
You would not be able to achieve the shopping center under ULI. Because ULI contains the square foot limitations, you can't do it under ULI. We actually looked at a number of different ways to get there. We looked at doing mixed use on the entire property. This combination was the thing that we worked through with staff to come up with the best way to approach both the commercial and the transition back to lower density to the north.
Okay.
So,
Good. All right, that's all my comments.
Okay,
I mean,
thank you.
Anyone else have a question?
Yeah, I'll say one thing. I just, as you said, the commercial need is definitely out there for Publix or wherever this is going to be. It really puzzles me that you don't have the Lake Winnemucet people here, because they were all up in arms about the
one on the east side.
Racetrack.
well, no, not the
Storage,
racetrack
the storage
specifically,
project.
but the storage, which is probably the most minimal effect you can have on a property. And this is drastically going to, and they're not here. Why?
Well, as I noted before, we've had multiple meetings with them over time, and I think there's been sort of an agreed treaty line that commercial activity was something they knew needed to come into the area, as long as it stayed west of Kepler. That's always been kind of the,
But it's
I
not
think,
going to
agreement.
affect the traffic one way or another any less.
Absolutely, but I think the concern
I just
before
really,
was-
at all means, I try to stay away from this intersection, even Victoria Park, because the new roundabout, there's wrecks basically every single day on that road. It's chaotic. So how do you think it's going to be when they get this they're going to have basically one lane around instead of two?
Actually, if you go back, Kelly, can you put the PowerPoint back up? It's actually got multiple lanes going through the roundabout here, so it's not just a one-lane roundabout. And
But
it
we only
has,
got two lanes on both sides coming up to it.
correct, so when you go through, and I guess it doesn't show all the lanes here, what this is designed to do, and if you look at how that roundabout is designed, so if you're coming in from I-4,
Right turns.
you've got a continuous right that's protected, so that there's a barrier that is there to
Yeah.
protect those turning movements. So those turning movements now that kind of go off the road and
Right.
have created that, rut and everything along the side of the pavement, those have a dedicated turn. That's true of every approach segment coming in here. So those right turn movements are allowed to have kind of a continuous flow through this intersection. In addition, you have the actual roundabout. So if you're going straight through, you'll go through the roundabout. If you're going to the south
I
from
just
here-
know the one at Victoria Park, that's chaos around there.
You-
Oh, my gosh.
They definitely take getting used to, and I agree with that fully. But this is the direction that both DOT and the county is heading with regard to our future intersections of this nature. And so,
Just right now, I mean, the traffic is backed up. Most times a day, it's backed up around Lake Winnemucet and all the way back to Minnesota down that way.
correct. And so that won't happen now.
Make it any better, I just,
Well, but with having a roundabout, you'll have continual flow. So instead of stopping for a light cycle, which is what creates the backup,
right.
now that flow, it will be congested at times.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I'm just saying, it's that bad right now. Just think when we add all this traffic to it.
Again, it will take adjustment, but this is an efficient means of moving the traffic through.
All right. Somebody I'd like to hear from later is Mr. Patterson. He's only 2 blocks from there where he lives, so. Yeah. Yeah.
And I do want to say, with regard to Lake Winnemucet, and we may have some folks here from Lake Winnemucet, but we have been very conscientious about trying to maintain contact with them. Even when we were working on the Crestwind project, the approval on the east side of Lake Winnemucet,
Right.
discussion was going on about this site and the development of the commercial node here at this site. We had a couple comments through that, was as long as there was a liquor store, everybody was happy with it. But in general, I think there's a recognition, if you go back to this image, there's a recognition that that use is needed in this location to serve the development that's occurred out there and that's continuing to occur under our long-term planning. So, if you look at how we've got our shopping and grocery opportunities around town now, all of them require trips from this area out to someplace else in order to have that shopping. This will actually reduce the length of those trips, redirect some of them so that they're coming here instead of going someplace else. And you know, this type of use, as you know, has a lot of captures a lot of existing pass-by trips and will shorten a lot of those existing trips that are on the road now because everybody has to shop still.
When is the proposed, what I would call it the Beersford extension, going into the turn, the Summit? What's the proposal time on that?
So if you drive up and down MLK now, you can see the segments of it under construction currently. If you look at the two stars that are on either side, you know, of MLK south of our site here, the one on the left is Victoria Reserve, the one on the right is Lakewood Park.
Okay.
Beersford is under construction across those segments now.
Is it going to join into the turn, or where's it going to come in at?
So the alignment that's been approved, if you know where the signal is now, where Summit comes in, Summit is actually going to be deconstructed and pulled back.
Gotcha.
Beersford is going to curve into that traffic signal. And then Summit will intersect into Beersford on the southern leg going south from that intersection.
Okay, and do they have a time span on that, when it's going to be doing?
Yeah, so Tuesday, this coming Tuesday,
Yeah.
design is underway on the segment. What has been holding that up has been the school board parcel that is between the sections of that right-of-way that have been dedicated and Summit. The county, when we were working on the Lakewood Park project, we dedicated right-of-way for the Beersford to go to either location, to either going into the curve, which was the original alignment that had been approved by the county, or to go across the school board property if the county and the city and the school board could come to terms and agree that route could be made possible across the school board property. By dedicating the extra land in that Lakewood Park project, by giving about, I think it was about 5 acres of additional land for the route that went into the curve,
Right.
what the city and the county were able to do was trade that land to the school board for the corridor going across the school board property. And that's the transaction that's closing on this coming Tuesday. So the right-of-way transfers, the surplus right-of-way is going to the school board to give them a bigger piece along 44. The school board is dedicating the corridor along the gas line that goes through their site and into the intersection at Summit. And the county is then going to move forward with constructing that final segment. That is my understanding in working with county traffic staff. The proportionate share dollars that are being generated in that area right now, or in this area right now, are going to the construction activity for that, for the portions that aren't being built by those developments that are underway.
Right, because that would definitely take a huge load off right there.
The projections that we've seen, and again, looking at, that corridor has been anticipated since 1996, when the 12 Oaks and Royal Oaks projects were approved kind of in that area. Those two projects kind of went away. They became the Crestwind project, the Lakewood Park project, and a couple of the other ones that are still there in the planning stages. But that corridor has been long planned to go through there. So in the projections that we've seen, 20 to 25% is about the estimate that I've seen on the numbers on the traffic that is diverted off of 44 and onto the Beersford bypass. So that I would expect to be, at the point where it's fully designed and under construction for that final section within the next 3 years or so. But again, that's part of our prop share process, is determining then what contribution is required and how those dollars are allocated. Or in the case of, Lakewood Park and Victoria Reserve, they are building, the sections of Beersford as part of their contribution to the road network development. So again, there's a lot of things happening, but there's a lot of planning that's involved in it. And so your staff's doing a great job, both your planning staff and your traffic and engineering staff, of planning for the development that both has occurred and is underway in this area.
So if this was approved, you still have to go through all engineering, through traffic and all that,
Just
correct?
the only section, again, the sections that come from Blue Lake out to the edge of the school board property are already designed and under construction.
Well, I'm back on your project as far as of course, transportation engineering, if it's got to approve any upgrades, you guys would
Right.
have to do and all that stuff.
And we can't move forward until we've done
So it's
that. This just
approved.
puts the zoning in place so we know what traffic level we're planning for and how we need to mitigate for
Yeah,
it.
okay.
And the roundabout is fully funded and starts construction early next year. So,
Okay, any other questions for the applicant? Okay, you can continue on, sir.
okay, well, that was what I had. So I'm happy to sit down and
Okay.
see if we've got some public that want to speak to it and then.
Yes,
come
we
back
do,
up.
and I'll give you a chance for rebuttal on that.
Thank you.
One of the things that I want to, just curiosity, what's the breakdown in the commercial? You're adding 14,254 daily trips a day with this project. Do you know what the breakdown is between the commercial side and the residential side of the multifamily?
I don't offhand, but I can probably pull that number and give it to you when I come back.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we do have some public participation forms for this case, and we'll go ahead and get them going here. Is Mr. Valentine here? Yeah, would you like to come forward, sir? Good morning, sir. Could I get your name and address for the record?
Yes, Paul Valentine, 700 Forest Lane, DeLand.
All right, sir. You've heard the presentation this morning. Obviously, you have comments
Yes, sir.
to this?
Good morning, by the way, Mr. Mills and the council. I appreciate you guys letting me have my say up here. The folks from Cobb Coal have done a really good job. They've been working for years for their client who wants to develop this corner of the property. I'm here to kind of, to add my voice in opposition to that. I just don't think that, that this level of development can be supported on the north side of Kepler Road. I mean, there's a lot of development going on the south side. It seems to me that that's really where a shopping center of this size should go. So the shopping center itself is not my biggest problem. My really biggest problem is the high-density development, you know, and those 14,500, 13,000 trips a day, or whatever it is. That's a lot of trips a day. And we all know what a problem Kepler Road is right now. I mean, it's really the only way to get to 92 on this end of town, and that's not going to get any better. Pulling in, you know, a high-density development on that side of the road. I also don't see that there's any, you know, that one church is not a transition into the rest of the, up until, the rest of the homesteads there are all on acreage up until Minnesota. So it seems to me that this level of density is just way too much for the north side of Kepler. Couple other points, I was writing notes. You know, the plan, I guess you guys have a plan, this is deviating from the plan. The plan should have taken into account the fact that it's a much lower density development on that side of Kepler. The reason why MLK was built was so that that kind of development could go out into that new area, and it was certainly appropriate. I just don't think it's appropriate on the north side of Kepler. I don't know. Let's see, the shopping, one of the notes I just took in is that really the shopping center, why put it on the edge of the development? You know, it should be closer to the middle of the development, you know, somewhere down on MLK in the area. So I'm going to go ahead and end it there. I do thank you for your time and letting me say my piece. And hopefully we'll have some other inputs.
Well, I want to put my 2 cents in. I live there. My Lake Charles Road comes right out.
Okay, you want to state your name for
My
that?
name is Juanita Valentine.
Okay, same address. Okay.
I live on Lake Charles Road, and as it stands now, it is very hard to get out onto Kepler. Also, Lake Charles Road is a school bus stop, and 100 yards north is the light at Minnesota. And just between those 2 points, you have a lot of congestion with the existing structures that are there. I just think that the density of this development is just too ambitious. And I'm frankly worried because it's my quality of life. I know what they want to do, but what about me? And you can't widen Kepler on the north side because it's private property on one side. I don't know what's on the left. But you also have those little streets, Mimosa, Tropical, and those are people trying to get out to go to the east side of Daytona for work. So it does, I just don't think the traffic was sufficient, the studies, to really compensate. They looked at everything from the south, but not from the north.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Lou, see if we have any questions for you. Do we have any questions for the speaker? Okay, I appreciate you coming forward and
Thank you.
telling us what you think. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Miss Sharon Cook.
Yes, I live at 300 Lake Charles.
Okay, you want to state your name and address, your name?
Sharon Cook. And now, as it stands, if you're going to a doctor or whatever, you need to make your appointment after 10 o'clock because from about 7 or 7:30 until 9:30, you cannot get out either on 44 or Lake Charles. Right now. And that's, you can't even turn into the Circle K off of Martin Luther because it's got those weird things there. You know, there's no way to turn in off of Martin Luther to Circle K. And we have got 2 new developments besides Victoria Square. And we have got the 600 homes that's going to go in on the far side of the lake. And I think maybe we need to wait till this Beersford extension is going in before we put any more. It cannot handle any more traffic. And this roundabout is going to create more accidents than the one at Martin Luther King, or in Orange Camp. And not only that, but there's a potential for road rage. Today, you can get shot if you're not, if you go too slow or if you don't understand how to do the roundabout, which I think most older people avoid it. And I know I do. And they have semi-trucks going through the school bus. I mean, it's unreal right now. And so I just can't see how. We've already turned down Racetrack because it was going to create all this traffic and all. And this is going to be 3 or 4 times more than Racetrack would ever generate. And then being the only Publix on that side of town, everybody in the world's going to come to that Publix. It's going to be like Walmart. So I just don't see it. I think after the Beersford extension goes in, maybe that it can be revisited and that might be fine. But as it stands now, we're creating some death traps.
Okay. Any questions for the speaker? Thank you, ma'am. Okay. That was the only 2 public participation forms I have. Would anybody else like to speak to this case? Okay. Mr. Watts, would you like to come back?
Yes, sir. Let me start by giving you a number and then address some of the comments that were raised. Mr. Chairman, you had asked if I could clarify the difference of the total potential maximum daily trips and everything coming from the proposed development. The residential component would be about 1,098 average daily trips. So out of the maximum of 13, coming in and out. And again, that's just a raw number. It doesn't take into account any of the, pass-by trips. Some of those are existing trips that are already there that are coming through this area. And just to give you the full breakdown, the retail is about 5,100 trips. The restaurants and things of that nature account for about 3,600 trips, again, depending on what those mix of restaurants are. And then the convenience store, which is already part of that one's already an approved PUD for that site, is about 3,600 trips. So those are the various component breakdowns on this. Okay. With regard to comments that were made. Again, I think the Valentines made the point that, the traffic studies that have been done to this point aren't sufficient, that there's more study that needs to be done. And I fully agree with that. Your process requires it. We have 3 levels of traffic analysis that have to be done anytime we're doing a project like this. We have a comprehensive plan analysis that looks at the theoretical maximum that can occur under the existing land use versus the theoretical maximum that, can occur under what's being proposed. And then you have zoning that looks at, okay, what are, when you add in the detail of what the zoning is, give us that analysis and help us identify the areas that we then need to study more closely. And then we get into the full TIA. The full TIA has to follow your guidelines and the TPO's guidelines for, this area. And we are required to study all traffic intersections and segments that are identified by county staff in coordination with the city and other local jurisdictions. And we have to go out 3 to 5 miles from the site and look at the impact of the project trips on those segments and on those intersections. And then we have to calculate our contribution to any deficiencies that are created, and then we have to mitigate those deficiencies with the county, either by providing funding to the county or by providing actual road improvements here. What we do know is that Beersford and the Beersford extension is where the county is targeting those dollars right now in this particular area. It previously was going towards the roundabout and to Beersford. But with the state and federal funding that came in for the roundabout, we've been able to redirect that funding to the Beersford extension primarily as the main improvement that's underway here. And again, that corridor is fully secured as of Tuesday and moving into design for the final segment. So I expect that development to move forward and that section to be built within the next 3 to 5 years. So we will have to, again, be working with your staff to contribute to those improvements. Kepler was mentioned, and one of the other things that county staff asked us to do with regard to Kepler is dedicate right-of-way. Kepler is not, there's not a sufficient right-of-way width there for the county in what they would want to plan for down the road if they want to ever expand Kepler. And so we have provided the additional right-of-way along all of this project's eastern boundary. Our requirements here, and you can see it in the development agreement, include the requirement to dedicate right-of-way and some easements to the county for potential future widening. That doesn't mean that the county is going to widen it. I think, frankly, the county is likely to try and keep Kepler as is so that traffic does not necessarily go north. It remains, going kind of east-west and to the south. So in any event, we have to do that analysis. And I said at the beginning of this, we're not asking for any exception or exemption from the county from that process. That's the next step. And as your staff had indicated early on, in order to get a development order, in order to then to move from a planning stage to engineering, design, and then construction, we have to satisfy those concurrency evaluations for schools, for traffic, for utilities, and all the other components that your comprehensive plan requires us to, in order to, and those are a condition of approval for us to get a development order. So we're not asking to be exempt from that. We're just asking to continue the planning that's been occurring for this intersection's transition from the current classifications that have been there since 1990 or so. The other comment that was raised was that you have a plan, for this property. You have a plan for what the comprehensive plan says it should be. And we do. There's a classification there in place. It's been there since 1990, and conditions have vastly changed since then. And as you all are aware, being on the planning board, a comprehensive plan is a living document. It is revised and updated over time to reflect the implementation of things through the community. This area ultimately will become part of the city of DeLand. This project likely would be going through approval in DeLand if it was contiguous. Lost my word. Contiguous at this point in time. It's not. But it has utilities from DeLand. It, is meeting the design standards for, their corridor standards and everything else, because it will eventually be part of DeLand. And so again, that's why I think we all have talked a lot about the 2050 plan, because this is the plan that the city of DeLand has for the location as well, and has for this in order to serve kind of the evolution that's occurred with regard to this overall area over the past, whatever that is, 33 years since the original comprehensive plan classification was adopted. So again, happy to answer any other questions. We understand the concern and frustration with regard to change that occurs, but this is a necessary one with regard to the use here. And my last point will be with regard to the residential density and that transition. The transition isn't from apartments to what's north. It's from commercial shopping center to something else, to church, to what is then to the north of it. And that's why, we don't know. We provided in the development agreement both townhomes and apartments as alternatives for that particular site. We don't know what form it will take, but that density is consistent with the 2050 planning that's occurred for this location and the requirement that it be a mixed use area. And it does fill a need with regard to housing. We for the past couple of months, I've had, a person living, we have a rental cottage. We had a new professional that moved to town. There were no apartments available, nothing available for him to move into as he was coming into the DeLand area. And so we, through some friends, opened our cottage up, said, we didn't have anybody yet. We had him live there. It took him the past 2 months to be able to find some place to actually go rent and move into. So that's the type of thing that we're continuing to struggle with as a community, that we don't have enough of that particular housing type. And so we're trying to diversify that. I think if you listen to the comments from the city, this is consistent with their long-term planning with regard to the housing diversity as well. So, again, happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Costa?
Yep. So this is a phased project?
Yes.
4 phases, I believe?
3.
3 total, all right. So to answer one of the questions that was asked was the timing. So obviously, phase 1 is the retail portion because you're doing that in conjunction with the roundabout.
Correct.
So that'll be mid to late 24?
Yes, I think, actually, to be open, I think it will probably be more into 25.
25?
I think, and I think the conclusion in the staff report is that the roundabout and this should be roughly concurrent if the roundabout doesn't open somewhat before the shopping center.
Right, so but the Circle K will be torn down, I mean, obviously,
Yes.
in conjunction with that roundabout?
Yes, Circle K is torn down.
And then, so the second phase then would be the multifamily parcel?
Yes, that's expected.
And-
Sometime probably 26, 27, 2026, 2027, sometime in
Okay,
that range.
yeah, so by the time you get through all this, we're at least 4 years out.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
And those phases, I think, are also included in your development agreement. I think we've got those estimated timelines. Now, they're subject to adjustment and change, but this all doesn't happen in one, over one night. This is something that would occur over time.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Mr. Watts, you stated that in your comments, and I caught this, you said that the county wants to move the traffic east, west, and south. Is that correct? That's your comment?
That was my comment with regard to where our road network is focused right now.
One of the reasons is because obviously trying to widening around Lake Talmadge there to the north would be very difficult, and even trying to get the right-of-way going through there. And this goes back to my point about moving the higher density towards the north. And as Mr. Valentine stated, he talked about transition, the same thing I was talking about. Even though on paper it looks like that, but when your actual eye looks at it, that's not, it's a big difference as you move along there in a short span. So, and you making that comment that there is no anticipation of widening Kepler to the north.
There's not a current plan, correct?
Right.
Yeah. Although they requested the right-of-way to accommodate it. I don't know, I'm not aware of any current plan to widen Kepler.
Or how far it's going. More than likely, if they do it, it'd go to Minnesota. Minnesota, and that's about as far as it would go.
In all likelihood, yeah. I think that would be the reasonable section.
Right. And as the folks were speaking of on Lake Charles there, unless there was a light there, it's going to be very difficult for them to transition that, getting on and off of Kepler Road there.
Yeah, I think what they're talking about, I think they have issues in the existing condition with regard to coming in and out of there. And I think you will likely, the easiest movement coming out of Lake Charles is going to continue to be a right-hand turn to go north on Kepler to ISB.
Yeah. Okay. All right, that's my questions, my comment. Okay.
Okay.
All right, we don't have any other public participation forms for this case, so we're going to open up for commission discussion. Mr. Patterson, you live there. Let's hear it.
Yeah, I live there. It's a nightmare. And the traffic is a fool's parade, morning, noon, and night, right now. No, please don't do that.
Let's hold that down, please. Go ahead.
And I've lived there about 30-some years now, and I've enjoyed the pleasure of living on a lake. I've got 4 acres on a lake, Lake Charles, dirt road. County at one time was going to come through and pave it, but then they decided they didn't have enough money, so it's still just a dirt road. And but getting in and out of there is a real nightmare. Believe it or not, I support roundabouts. Having driven through Europe many times in the roundabouts, I can see the value of a roundabout. And I'm kind of happy of what's going to be happening there at that intersection, but it's still, the traffic is just awful now, and it's going to get worse. My biggest problem right now, I've got people coming from off of 44 and coming through Lake Winnimisset and then coming down Lake Charles Road, and it's a speedway. And I was able, when I was on the county council years ago, the county did put in 2 stop signs at 2 ends to try to slow it down, but they just run through it anyway, so it was kind of a useless thing to have the stop signs there. But it is a speedway, and I'm on a triple S curve, and you can imagine 16 to 21-year-olds who love to just barrel through there at about 45 miles an hour on a triple S curve. So it's a nightmare. It's going to be a major change in the lifestyle of the people in that area that live there now. A major lifestyle change. I just can't support it. It's just a problem.
And I've lived here all my life also, and I've lived in that area all my life, and I can and transit. You talk about growth. This used to be. You got to remember, this used to be orange grove and ferneries throughout that whole north side of Kepler there, and now we're into the housing, and then we get the ranchette style housing to the north of this project or proposed project, and then we throw in the not even the development of low density development, a high density with the townhouses and apartments, and to me it just doesn't fit, and it don't fit, and unfortunately, as much as I'd like to say yes, go ahead, we turned down a racetrack on the south east corner of this intersection because of this same thing, and with a whole lot less impact of what this is going to have. And you start adding on the 14,254 daily trips a day, and then you also add in the Crestwood development hasn't even started yet, or maybe it has, but that's 600 more units there. I don't know what the traffic count is on that. That was the city. And I do know that the city in there, they put in a new, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, a new designation for the lower densities, even in their proposed future 2050 growth projection. So, and if it does end up city, obviously, city has no agricultural designation, so it would be more than likely if it goes into the city, that would be there. It would still be I don't know what it would be, but I do know they have that designation. That's what they're trending towards now because of the pushback. I know we're not supposed to look at social media that much, but I've heard a lot of on social media about this. And I'm right there where you're at. Unfortunately, as much as I'd like to have the commercial development there, I can't support it because I know that the impact it will have on that area. Anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, Mark did a great presentation. I think there's a need for a commercial out there, a grocery store, but if it was down MLK towards Victoria Park, I think I would be in full vote of it, in support of it, but north side, I just can't handle it. I don't know. I can't give it support.
Ms. Craig, would you like to?
Yes, thank you. I don't have a dog in this fight because I don't live out in that area. However, I've suffered through that traffic circle that exists currently a number of times, and I found it very poorly designed, very confusing. I can see that as being a tremendous problem for an intersection that's this heavily used. And I also have real concerns about quality of life issues for the people who already live there, who moved there because it's not developed intensely. So I would have to withhold any support for it. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else like to comment? Okay, would someone like to make a motion?
Let me give the applicant one opportunity to withdraw, if so choose.
I think at this time, we are prepared to proceed forward. Again, we've been working on the site and, worked hard to get staff support and make sure that we didn't have a room full of multicolored or coordinated colored shirts here with regard to this development. So,
Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity.
No problem. With that being said, let me say we're doing, first one is CPA 23-010. So I make a motion that we find the future land use amendment consistent with the comprehensive plan and forward the application, case number CPA-23-010.
Mr. Costa, just we prefer, or at least I prefer, that the motions be made in the positive. So if you are making a motion to forward it consistent and that fails, I would ask for another motion in the reverse to find it not consistent.
So I am making a motion in the positives to start with.
When I say the positive, I mean the motion that passes is the one that goes to council. If your motion to find it consistent fails, there's going to have to be another motion
Correct.
to find it inconsistent.
All right, so we're looking at two separate motions. First one's going to fail, the second one's going to pass.
If it comes to that, yes.
If it comes to that. All right, so I continue reading now? Thank you. So case number CPA-23-010 to the County Council with a recommendation of approval to transmit to the Department of Economic Opportunity for expedited state review and to the Volusia Growth Management Commission, VGMC, for certification.
Thank you, Mr. Costa. Do I have a second?
I'll second it to get it for the vote.
Yep.
Okay. I've got a motion on the floor for Mr. Costa to find the future land use amendment consistent with the comprehensive plan and forward the application, case number CPA 23010 to County Council with a recommendation of approval to transmit the Volusia Growth Management Commission for certification. From Mr. Costa and a second from Ms. Shelley. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. What is that? 5 to 1?
Yeah.
In denial.
Denial, so.
Okay.
Second motion. So I make a motion to find the future land use amendment inconsistent with the comprehensive plan and forward the application, case number CPA 23-010 to the County Council with a recommendation of denial. The rest I can stop reading, correct? The rest is irrelevant?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Second. And a second from Mr. Patterson? Okay. All right, I've got a motion on the floor for Mr. Costa to find the future land use amendment inconsistent with the comprehensive plan and forward the application, case number CPA 23010, the County Council with the recommendation of denial. And I've got a second from Mr. Patterson. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Yay.
Okay, motion carries 5-1. Okay, we've got the PUD.
Does the PUD go forward since the
Does it go
CPA?
forward?
Yes, it should go forward. These are all recommendations, so we would need a recommendation from this commission when both items go to county council.
Okay. Okay, on case PUD 23008, bringing it to commission discussion.
No discussion.
Is there any discussion on this? Okay, then what I'll do is open it up for motion.
So this PUD really is, it's dead without the CPA.
I know it.
So, all right, so in that case, I'll just skip right to the denial portion, and, all right. I make a motion on PUD-23-008 that we forward the rezoning application to the county council for final action with a recommendation of denial.
Second. I've got a motion on the floor for Mr. Costa to forward the rezoning application case number PUD 23008 to county council with final action and recommendation of denial. And a second from Mr. Patterson. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-1. Okay.
We appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you, sir. Okay, that ends it for the old business. Unfinished old business, let me put it that way. We're going to get through this, and we're going to move right into new business. Miss Shelley, could I get the new business, please?
Yes, sir. Case number PUD-23-012, a rezoning from the light industrial zoning classification to planned unit development zoning classification with an industrial subclassification.
Okay, and this is Mr. Hanson.
Good morning, once again, Michael Hanson, Planning Development Services. This particular application for PUD rezoning is resultant of the property being located in the High Ridge Local Plan. There's a local plan policy, High Ridge Local Plan Policy 1.3.3, that requires any non-residential development that is 1 acre or larger to be processed as a PUD, and that's the reason for this request for rezoning. As you look on the current zoning classification map ahead, the property is surrounded by adjacent industrial zoning. Right now, it currently has an light industrial I1 zoning classification. To the north is the city of Daytona Beach, which is a planned industrial park, and then just to the south is a BPUD. Now, with the proposed rezoning to PUD, the development agreement is set up because the property now exceeds 1 acre, is designed in 2 phases. For the first phase, for the applicant to use the property as a contractor storage yard, which is an allowed right in the light industrial zoning classification as is. When you read through the actual development agreement, it allows permitted uses of all the uses of the light industrial zoning classification, and the minimum dimensional standards in the development agreement are mirrored from our zoning classification for light industrial that allows the applicant or future owners of the property to utilize and go through just final site plan for any potential changes to use for the property. Otherwise, as I was mentioning, as you can see on the map, it shows 2 future buildings. Those buildings are set for phase 2 of the development per the plan unit development, with an anticipated date of commencement in approximately 10 years. So that puts it 2023 or 2033, 2034, somewhere along that time frame. This concept plan that you see before you is conceptual in nature. It will have to go through a final site plan application following potential rezoning from the county council to PUD. and will have to account for meeting all the requirements of the Land Development Code, landscape buffer requirements, off-street parking requirements, and it also is partially within the wellhead protection zone, so it will be subject to meeting the requirements of our wellhead protection overlay as well. In review of the criteria for the rezoning, staff found that ultimately the application is consistent with all the requirements for rezoning to PUD, as the current use of the property is already zoned I-1 and the proposed use proposed PUD allows all the uses of the I-1. It wouldn't create any extra or any increases in traffic to the property that's not already allowed by right as is. I'm available for any questions the board may have for this rezoning.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Any question for Mr. Hanson? Okay, is the applicant present? Good morning, sir. Could I get your name and address for the record?
Still morning? Travis Hudson, 3575 Old DeLand Road.
Mr. Hudson, you've heard the staff report. Is anything you'd like to comment on?
This property's been in the family for over 3 decades. I'm a contractor and I'm just trying to use my property.
All right, sir. Any questions for the applicant? All right, let's see if do we have any public participation for this case?
No, sir.
Okay, we're going to close the floor for public participation and open up for commission discussion or a motion.
I'll make a motion that we forward the rezoning application case number PUD-23-012 to the county council for final action with a recommendation of approval.
Second.
I got a motion on the floor from Mr. Costa to forward the PUD 23012, the rezoning application to county council for final action recommendation of approval, and a second from Ms. Shelley. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Ms. Shelley, could I have the next case, please?
Yes, sir. Case number V-23-071, a variance to the maximum fence height requirements on urban single-family residential R1 zoned property.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley, and this one is Mr. Hanson also.
Good morning once again. This particular variance application is resultant because the applicants are looking at establishing a 6-foot high fence within the secondary front yard on a corner lot. However, they want to develop it with a double wide gate, so that's the reason why this isn't being considered as an administrative variance. On the proposed site plan, as you can see there, the fence is recessed 24 feet from the property line. This property is zoned R1. R1 has a front yard setback of 30 feet. In review of the proposed variance request for fence height, staff has a recommendation of denial, noting that within the front yard, as is, the fence could be constructed without variance at 4 feet in height. It's not the minimum necessary to make reasonable use of the land, building, or structure. The fence location is based on the applicant's choice to design in that location, and the literal interpretation does not create a hardship. However, it's unlikely to be injurious to the area. The fence is located, proposed location is set interior of a tree line on the property. So it's further inside of a line of trees that kind of establishes a sense of a border for the fence. I'm available for any questions that the board may have.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Any questions for staff? Mr. Hanson, you said this would, the reason it wasn't done administratively was because of the gate?
Yes, sir. So if you recall, for the administrative variance ordinance that was recently approved, if the applicant didn't have a gate on this portion for the secondary yard, that would have then met the requirements or criteria for an administrative variance. However, because it has that gate, it couldn't demonstrate that the applicant wouldn't have ingress, egress access to the backyard, because when I spoke with the applicant, the full intent of that gate was so that they would be able to navigate the backyard and park a boat and trailer and access it for the property.
Okay. Okay. All right. So any other questions for staff? Okay, the applicant, come forward, please. Get your name and address for the record.
Clinton Frank, 129 Blanco Drive, land 32724.
Okay, you've heard the staff report. Anything you'd like to add to it?
Yeah, again, we just want the fence. The biggest reason we want it in that location is because our neighbor behind us, their fence actually ends at that spot as well. We want to line it up directly with their fence to keep it continuous all the way around the property. Theirs is at the 24-foot mark, not set back 30 feet like it's supposed to be, and we just want it in the same spot. You know, the administrative approval would have put us there, other than we need a gate, and I can't put a gate on the front side of the property. There's just not enough room.
Okay. All right. Any questions for the applicant? Do we have any public participation for us? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to close the floor for public participation, open up for commission discussion or a motion.
I'll make a motion, case number V-23-071, that we approve this variance with the one staff recommended condition.
Okay. I've got a motion on the floor from Mr. Costa to approve variance V-23-071 with the one staff condition, and a second from Mr. Costa. Any discussion on the motion?
Other way around, second from Mr. Stoney.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep.
A motion from Mr. Costa and a second from Mr. Sixman.
There you go.
But I'm trying to move it on, getting caught up here, tripping over my own words.
That's all right.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, our next case, please. Ms. Shelley.
Yes. Okay. Case number V-23-081, a variance to the minimum yard requirements on urban single-family residential R4 zoned property.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. And this is Mr. Shams.
Hi, good morning. Steve Shams with Volusia County Planning. The subject property is a waterfront lot on Shocking Drive in the Ormond Beach area. The property is zoned R4 and is currently developed with a single-family home, a Florida room, a shed, and a wooden dock. The home itself was built in 1976. The applicant purchased the home in April of this year and is requesting one variance to construct a pool and screen enclosure at the rear of the home. The variance they're requesting is a reduction of the south waterfront yard from 25 feet to 16 feet. In July 2021, the county increased the waterfront yard requirement from 10 feet to 25 feet. In the written petition, the applicant asserted that there is not enough buildable area for an in-ground pool while meeting this 25-foot waterfront setback. Overall, staff recommends denial of the variance because although there is a special condition on the property, the condition is a result of the applicant's actions as they are proposing the size and location of the pool. Should the PLDRC find competent substantial evidence to support the approval, we have two staff recommended conditions. One is limiting the size and location of the pool and screen enclosure as shown on the site plan, and the second is for a wetland alteration permit to be required for any impacts to the wetland buffer. I'm available for comments or questions.
Thank you, Mr. Shams. Any questions for the for staff? Is the applicant present? Good morning, sir. Could I get your name and address for the record?
Timothy Lott, 1096 Shockney, Ormond Beach.
Okay, you've heard the staff report. Anything you'd like to add to that?
No, just that we just want to put a pool in, so when we have grandkids come down, and all our neighbors have them as well.
Okay. All right, any questions for the applicant?
Have you seen the recommendations from staff? should this pass? You're okay
Yes.
with those, both of
Yes.
those? Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right, sir, do we have any public participation forms for this one? Okay, we're going to close the floor for public participation and open up for commission discussion on a motion.
I'll be glad to make a motion.
Ms. Shelley?
I move that case number V-2381 be approved, subject to two staff conditions.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion from Ms. Shelley to approve variance V-23081 with the two staff conditions, and a second from Mr. Costa. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Gregg, did you want to comment on that? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I have a problem with the viability of the wall in light of the problems that we've had following the hurricane season that we had last year. And I think that we need to be more careful as we go forward with allowing the weakening of the land structure before a body of water like that. So I'm not in favor of allowing the pool to be put any closer. It makes it a little bit easier with the recommendations that are being made, but having been in a situation with a pool close to the edge of water like that and seeing how difficult it is to maintain it and keep its condition up, I'm going to have to go against this recommendation.
Okay. Does anyone like to reconsider their vote on that comment? Okay, the motion, am I correct? Okay, who slipped in here? Well, you don't look like Mr. Sawyer to me.
Chris Ryan, Assistant County Attorney. I think you've effectively ratified the vote, as long as no one wants to change their vote.
No one's changed.
Okay, that should be fine.
Okay, all right. All right, the motion carries 5-1 with Ms. Craig in dissent. Okay, next case, Ms. Shelley.
Yes, sir. Case number V-23-083, variance to the minimum yard requirements on planned unit development with a residential subclassification PUD zoned property.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley, and this is Mr. Hanson.
Good morning once again. This particular variance application is in order to allow the applicant to construct a 1,500 square foot garage measuring 30 by 50 feet in the rear corner of their property. The property is part of the Stone Island Plan Unit Development, which has a dimensional requirement of a 30-foot rear yard. So their proposed site plan, they're looking at reducing that required 30-foot rear yard down to 15 feet. The property in itself is entirely within the 100-year floodplain, FEMA's flood zone AE, where the base elevations are determined. As you see on the site plan, there's a couple structures already in existence in the proposed location for this garage. The applicant plans to remove the carport and shed and that propane tank that are taking up the space for this garage. The intent by the applicant is to be able to site their work equipment and vehicles within the garage to better secure the property. And he noted that they primarily access the property from the west side of the house. So part of the intent that the applicant stated to me is that by having the garage sited back at that location, it would not obstruct the view shed of the, essentially the front primary door of the property. I did want to make note that we did receive 3 letters of support on this particular property. One's to the immediate west and east as adjacent neighbors at 450 Stone and 424 Stone Island, and then received one actually earlier this morning via email located at 1480 Shell Mound Road, which is within the neighborhood to the west of the proposed lot. Overall, though, staff has a recommendation denial in the variance request. I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Any questions for staff?
You said 3 total of approval?
That's correct, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, is the applicant present? Good morning, sir. Could I get your name and address for the record?
Yes, sir. Ryan Wood, 440 Stone Island Road.
You've heard the staff report. Anything you'd like to add to it?
Well, basically, I'm just trying to put in a larger building, therefore I can get everything out of my garage and have storage. And I currently have a pontoon boat. I also have a repair, remodel, drywall business, which I've been paying a storage facility since 2006. An amount that just keeps to escalate annually. So now I'm at $3,000 a year. So by putting the building there, it's going to allow me to put all the stuff into there. Therefore, I'm going to not have to incur that additional cost. There is room actually to put the building where, you know, by staying 30 feet off of the back. However, that would kind of accrue into the driveway portion of the house. I think aesthetically, just for the neighborhood in general, you know, it looks more appealing to be parallel with the backside of the home.
Okay, sir. Do we have any questions for the applicant? Mr. Costa?
So if I'm looking at this layout correctly, the front of the new building then lines up with the back edge of your house? Is that what the concept is?
Yes, sir.
Keep it just past the backyard, I should say?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Is it the same, look at this bottom picture, is it the same one where the pontoon boat's at?
Is what, the same one?
I said, is the building going to be, just looking at these pictures, the same spot where the pontoon boat's at?
Yes, sir. That carport would be gone, the shed would be gone, and it would just be a larger building to accommodate
There, yeah.
all of those items.
And HOA has no problem with it?
Correct, no problem.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any public participation for this? We're going to close the floor for public participation, open up for commission discussion or motion.
I'll make a motion, case V23-083, that we approve it with the, was it one staff? Yeah, one staff recommended condition.
Okay, I got a motion on the floor from Mr. Costa to approve variance V23-083 with the one condition, and a second from Mr. Sixma. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Ms. Shelley, could I get the next case, please?
Yes, sir. Case number V-23-084, a variance to the minimum yard requirements on urban single-family residential R4 zoned property.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. Mr. Hanson, this one's yours.
Good morning once again. This particular variance is for a reduction of the waterfront setback for a swimming pool, also on Shockney Drive, similar to the one that we heard recently today. It's worth noting, as you take a look, it abuts the Tomoka River to the east. As far as that particular property, there was a house on this property that ended up being demoed due to damage received from storm damage back in 2005. The property is entirely within the 100-year floodplain as well. Currently, as you see on the site plan, the applicants propose, they're planning on putting in for a permit for a house. They haven't done as of yet. That proposed house meets the setbacks, but the only variance request is to reduce the required 25-foot front yard, or 25-foot water front yard for that swimming pool, and reduce it down to 13.25 feet so that they can site it in. The current requirement for swimming pool is 25 feet to meet the waterfront setback. Previously, back in, as of July of 2021 is when the county changed the standard that only required a swimming pool to meet a 10-foot required yard. As is, it has to meet the current standards. Staff has a recommendation of denial noting that the case failed to meet 4 of the 5 criteria, and we have 2 recommended conditions as well, should the PLDRC decide to approve the variance. I'm available for any questions you may have. Actually, to take that back, we did receive 2 letters of support on the property, one from the adjacent property to the south located at 985 Shockney, and one from across the street at 992 Shockney Drive as well. And I'll yield for any questions.
Those were support?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Letter of support.
Okay, any questions for staff? Mr. Hanson, you mentioned there that it went from 10 to 25. What was was there reasoning behind that, or what was the reasoning behind that?
That I'm not entirely sure. It actually predates my employment with the county, because it happened July 10th of 2021 when the regulation for the ADU regulation went into effect.
Ms. Smith, would you happen to know what?
Could you just repeat the question?
Well, he mentioned that the setback went from 10 to 25. What was the purpose in that?
That was the request of our environmental group. They're looking at wetlands and wetland buffers, and they thought that that was a more appropriate distance on the waterfront yard.
Was that because of flooding? Is that what the reason for it? I mean,
No, they just wanted they want to keep people out of the wetland buffers. So they asked for that to be added into that change.
okay. Okay. Ms. Craig, did you have a question? Okay. Is the applicant present? Good morning. Could I get your name and address for the record?
Good morning. Jennifer Waldo, 6218 Tortoise Creek Lane, Port Orange, 32128.
Okay. And,
Kenneth Waldo, same address.
okay. Are you speaking also? Okay.
This is our
got it.
contractor. He's here for.
Okay. You've heard the staff report. Anything you'd like to add to it?
Yes, thank you all for allowing us to speak in regards to our variance. First off, let me introduce myself. I am Jennifer Waldo. We moved to Volusia County in 2014 due to a military transfer. I'm a veteran of 20 years from the United States Coast Guard. My husband, Ken Waldo, is still serving in the Coast Guard Reserves, 26 years plus honorable service. We have 2 daughters, Paige and Chloe. When this property came on the market, I knew we had to have it. This was the only affordable way to get my family on the water. As you know, 989 Shockney is an atypical waterfront lot. We have to fit a great deal on this lot besides the home and the pool. Simple solution would be to push the home towards the road. However, with our septic system location, that is not possible. And I don't know if you could put this on the overhead. This is basically the site plan that shows.
It's from the engineer, the septic engineer.
We have gone to every length to minimize the drainage field by installing a top-of-the-line drip irrigation disposal system as laid out in the packet. I am not the expert on septic systems. I left that up to Chris Casio, the engineer, and Paul from Godawa Septic. They reassured me that this system is the most environmentally friendly system out there. There is also the placement of the well that limits us from utilizing certain parts of our property. This is also laid out on the paper. The well is strategically placed away from the adjoining properties, septic and well. All these play a part in the placement of our site plan. We need enough space within this home for our family. Since this property is in a flood zone, the home needs to be built up. We have truly thought through every scenario. This is why we are asking for this variance to be approved. As you can see, it is 165 square feet that needs to be approved for the rear setback. As Mr. Hanson mentioned, we have 2 emails on our behalf, one of which is next to the proposed pool area. We are not asking for anything that is not already existence on this road. Most would say a pool is a luxury, which I agree. As a disabled veteran, I use water therapy as a way to maintain my healthy weight and care for certain aches and pains. Thank you all for this consideration.
I think a couple other things. I know the concern came up about the seawall, but with the condition of the soil, we're going to use concrete pylons to go up, which are also going to support the pool deck, so to get away from having some effect on the break wall as well. We do have to go about 5 to 7 feet up in dirt, so any concerns of the break wall we don't feel will be needed, which the break wall was just upgraded to coquina rock within the past 2 years from the previous landowner.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant?
I was wondering, as chair, you're the expert on septic systems. What's your thoughts? Your whole life.
Well, she was correct in saying what she did.
Okay.
Basically, what a drip irrigation is that it's small, it looks like a water hose, and it goes out and it's got emitters, and therefore they don't go the depth into the ground in order to get in the, and they're using an ATU, and I'm sure it's an NS245, which is a nitrogen and phosphorus reductant type system. So, yes, they're correct in stating what they did as far as the most environmental friendly. Okay. All right, do we have any questions for the applicant? Ms. Craig, did you have a question?
Has there been any discussion about a sewer system being put in that area, or has that been eliminated?
I believe it's been addressed in the past, and it's fallen deaf ears. The current residents, I guess they have attempted to get sewage system in that area, but they were unsuccessful.
Mr. Chair, just a reminder, this is a setback variance to the waterfront yard. It does not involve the sewer system or
Right,
any of the other
yeah.
issues that are going on
I
Shopton
think she was
Drive.
doing it more to see for the location of the pool more than whether it would be, but anyway, okay.
All right.
All right. Do we have any public participation for, okay, we're going to close the floor for public participation and open it up for commission discussion or a motion.
I'll be glad to make a motion.
Go ahead.
I move that case number V-23-084 be approved, subject to the two staff conditions.
Second.
Go ahead, Mr. Patterson, second.
As a former Navy guy, I got to support my fellow shallow water sailors here.
All right. Okay, I have a motion on the floor for Ms. Shelley for variance V-23-084 with the two conditions the staff put forward, and a second for Mr. Patterson. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ms. Craig, are you for the?
Yes, she said aye.
Okay, okay. All right, motion carries unanimously. Okay, Ms. Shelley, could I get there?
Yes, sir. Case number V-23-086, variances to the maximum fence height on urban single-family residential R4 zoned property.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. Mr. Shams, this one's yours.
Hi, good morning. Steve Shams with Volusia County Planning. The subject property is a corner lot on Seahawk Drive in the Ormond Beach area. Property is zoned R4 and developed with a single-family home and an in-ground swimming pool, which were constructed in 1990. The applicant is requesting two variances to increase the maximum fence height from 4 feet to 6 feet and in both front yards. Variance 1 is to increase the maximum fence height in the north front yard, and variance 2 is in regards to the east front yard. As you can see on the site plan, the home is situated in a way that provides access to the north side and the east side, which is why this variance did not qualify for the administrative variance.
Can you repeat that, please?
Yes, so the home is a corner lot, and it has access on the north side and the east side, and that is the reason why administrative variance didn't apply, because there's two driveways.
Okay.
Two entrances. In 2009, the applicant received a permit for a 4-foot fence in the north front yard and a 6-foot fence outside of the front yard. In June 2023, they applied for a permit to replace the fence with the 6-foot fence that is in question. Overall, staff recommends denial of the variances because both fail 4 of 5 criteria. Should the PLDRC find the applicants have provided competent evidence, we have one staff condition, and that it's the variances are limited to the location of the fence as shown in the site plan. And I'm available for questions.
Any questions for staff? Nope. Do we have any public participation on this one? No? All right. Then.
The
Oh, the applicant, I'm sorry. The applicant is here, my bad.
I think it's still morning, isn't it?
It is.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. No, I really would appreciate it if you guys have to approve this right now. If I can get that fence in there, I could have some plants over there on that side. Right now, the salt air comes over there, blows down that road, and it kills everything I've tried. There is a house that is like mine. It's on the corner of Sea Harbor and Sea Bridge. It's right there on the corner. I don't think there's any difference between the two of us, and they have received that variance. Their fence is a solid one that comes further out than what mine's going to be coming out. So I really would appreciate it if I get approval.
Any questions for the applicant? We do have a public participation form, and I will give you a chance for rebuttal if you would like to speak after the fact. So if you'd just like to have a seat here in the front, and is Mr. Cogan here? Would you like to come forward, sir? All right, could I get your name and address for the record, sir?
My name is Yakov Kogan. I live at 13 Sandola Drive in Ormond Beach. Ormond by the sea, essentially.
And you'd like to speak to this case?
Yes, we own the house at 24 Seahawk, so that's to the south from the property in question.
Okay.
My main concern is variance number 2, so which is like that small section on the eastern part of the property. I do not quite understand what the applicant is trying to do. They do have a 6-foot gate in that area right now. And like there is a drainage easement there, and there is like one drainage inlet in the front of that property, and there is another one in the north, so it would be northwestern corner of their property, actually southwestern corner of their property, northwestern, I guess, of my property. So I would say the drainage pipe probably goes right under the drainage easement. I'm against anything that could further impede access to that drainage easement.
Okay, the variance before us today is for the fence height, not necessarily the fence in itself. It's just for the height.
Well, this, I
So
understand.
we're not determining whether a fence could be allowed to be permitted there or not. Obviously, that would go before permit, right? Am I correct in stating that? We're just looking at the fence height. That's all we're looking at. We're not looking at the fence, we're looking at its height.
So will this variance allow them to construct the permanent fence?
They'll still have to pull a permit get a permit to pull for the fence. And in the event there is a problem with an easement, it would come up at that time.
Well, as I stated, there is a 6-foot high gate there right now. And I don't see the reason why it should be replaced by a permanent fence, because it will impede access to the drainage easement.
Well, like I said, all we're here for is the height of the fence. We're not here for the fence or not. That will be left up to permitting.
They're allowed to have a fence there, period.
Yes.
They didn't have to come to see us to put a fence there, is what we're saying to you. So they can have a fence there right today without having to go through this process. The only thing they're asking that is not by right is to make the fence a little bit higher. So we could not deny a 4-foot fence there to begin with.
So, and I stated that they already have a 6-foot gate.
Right.
There in the fence, constructed at the same time with the fence. So, that's against the against the regulation, I guess.
So are you saying there's a fence there now with a gate in it?
There is a gate there right now that's 6
And there's already
foot high.
so it's connected as with the fence.
Yeah.
So there's an illegal, is that illegal? Or no?
This
It's not
action would
permitted.
legitimize that 6-foot fence, or they could put a new one up at 6 feet high.
This is,
But by you all approving this would make it a legitimate fence.
I got you.
So they're not changing it?
Yeah, well, yeah.
They're not taking a gate out, or are you taking the gate out?
Can you check the report and see what that says on that side, please?
'Cause I don't remember, I see a gate drawn there, looking at it, or the little X.
Well, a little X, I guess, is just the designation of the fence on the survey. It doesn't show the gate.
I think I may be able to address your drainage
Okay.
easement. When properties are platted, we do include drainage easements, and these were platted a long time ago. That does not mean that it necessarily is being used for drainage at this time, which is why we will allow fences to go across those easements. But if our people are actively using that, they have the right to go in and take that fence down, because you can't have permanent structures in those easements. So if there's any need to get in there, our people can get in there still.
Well, after Irma, there is a really narrow passage on the, right here on, I guess, going from the south, going from the
So is this an after
south
the
to
fact?
the north. And it's like barely 5 foot wide. And after Irma, your people, like county, did check the drainage in the back of the property to make sure, and it was partially blocked, I guess. So it's being maintained.
Will that be left up to permitting to decide that? We're not here to decide that. We're just looking at fence height.
Well, I mean, all I can say is I'm concerned.
Okay.
And drainage is of utmost importance in our area.
Okay. It's noted, sir. We'll make notation of that.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for coming before us. Would you like to speak to anything, a rebuttal on that?
I have a question for her.
Yeah, Ms. Cox.
For the. So on that side that he's referring to, there is currently a gate or a fence there now?
Yeah, actually Fence Outlet put it in, and they're the ones who pulled the permit.
That's a
for it.
6-foot fence already? Or is that a 4-foot fence there? On that variance 2 on the map?
It's 4 foot.
It is a 4-foot. All right, so we're replacing the 4 with the 6. That's the plan.
Yes.
On variance 2, and then on variance 1 is to legitimize the 6-foot that's already there. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Now that I've got clarification.
Okay, do we have any other public participation forms for this case? Okay, we're going to close the floor for public participation and open it up for commission discussion or a motion.
I'll make a motion, case V23-086, that we approve variances 1 and 2 with the staff recommended conditions, which is the 1. Yep.
Okay. Okay, I've got a motion on the floor for Mr. Costa to approve variances 1 and 2 for V23-086 with the one staff condition, and a second for Mr.
Could we get the condition repeated, please?
The condition.
The staff recommendation.
Okay, you want to repeat that? Shams? I mean, Miss Smith? No, Mr. Shams.
Sure. The condition is that variances 1 and 2 are limited to the location as shown on the variance site plan. So if you bring the site plan up, that's where they'll be.
Okay. Okay, I've got that from Mr. Costa and a second from Mr. Sixman. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, Ms. Shelley, could I get the home run here?
Case number S-23-11, a special exception for a private school on Prime.
I'm sorry, Ms. Shelley, do you mind repeating that? Your microphone's not on. Thank you.
Case number S-23-011, a special exception for a private school on prime agriculture, a one-zoned property.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. Ms. Smith, this is yours.
Yes, full disclosure, I'm a huge supporter of Easter seals, so I'm very pleased to bring this project forward. Easter Seals recently purchased a 15.57 acre parcel, an agricultural parcel on Pioneer Trail. Development plans include a private school and a therapy center for special needs students. They'll offer summer camp and after-school programs as well. It's a phased approach. The first phase is going to include the existing structures, then it'll include about 50 students. Future phases may include construction of new buildings and amenities for students in grades K through 12. The property is zoned A1, and it has an existing horse stable and agricultural facilities that are going to be incorporated into the school's program. This use is allowed in A1 with an approved special exception. The existing buildings and the swimming pool will need to be upgraded from the residential standards to meet the building and fire code for commercial structures and public assembly. And there is one change from the staff report. The staff report states that the hours of operation will be from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Friday. The applicant has requested a change that they be allowed to operate Monday through Saturday so they can have some of the children come on site and pick some of the vegetables and things that may be on site on the weekends. And then they've also asked for one time a month to be able to open in the evening. So they'll have one time a month where they will be open till 8 p.m. so they can hold fundraisers or hold PTA meetings or things like that. And we do support that request. So we're asking the PLDRC to forward the case to County Council with a recommendation of approval with conditions 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and a modified condition number 2 to reflect the expanded hours of operation. I'm available for any questions.
Question.
And the applicant is here, and I believe has a presentation.
I got a question for staff.
Yes, Mr. Costa.
Yep. So it's an allowed exception under A1. This particular school or any school?
Private or parochial schools
Private
are
or
allowed.
parochial.
And this
So-
will be a private school.
So this could be potentially a private school K through 12.
Over time, with the construction of additional buildings and bringing all the buildings up to the current codes.
That's a possibility.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I do believe they plan to limit the number of students in each classroom, but they can share those details with you about their program.
Yeah, I want to wait for their presentation before I ask other questions. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? All right, is the applicant present? Good afternoon, sir. Could I get you, ma'am, could I get your name and addresses for the record?
Thomas Horowski, TMH Consulting, 97 North St. Andrews Drive, Northern Beach, Florida.
All right.
Bev Johnson, 850 Grouper Avenue, New Smyrna Beach, Florida.
Okay, you've heard the staff report. I'm sure there's some information you'd like to give us, so go ahead.
Well, I know that you're familiar with Easter Seals as a quality service agency within the county. They've operated charter pre-K for a number of years in several locations throughout the county, and most of the therapists that work in the school system are Easter Seals employees. They know the demand for educational services for students with limitations, and they have the skills to operate a K-12, which is eventually where we would like to go with the facility. I hope you had a chance to look at the programs, the North Florida School for Special Education in Jacksonville and the Pace Brantley School over in Seminole County that we highlighted in our staff report, because those facilities are the models that we've used in developing the program here. The site is really perfect to fit those models, and we think we can do this with minimal impact to the existing neighborhood. As the staff report indicated, the development will be phased. The first phase will start with older children because of the challenges that we have in converting the existing structure to the school use, and ultimately we'll expand downward essentially through the grade levels to go with a K-12 program. Probably one class at each grade level. Assuming we can get the special exception approval, we'll start the site plan review for the first phase, and as time and funding allows, they'll move forward with the second phase. But basically, the first phase uses the existing buildings that are on site. They have the architectural team working now on converting, designing the conversion for those spaces. Ms. Johnson she's the executive director for Easter Seals, and she may want to make a couple of comments, and then we'll be available for questions.
All right, sir, thank you. It's Pam.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to present as well. So many of you know our children are special that we serve in this community, and we would like a place for them to live, learn, play, work, and thrive, just like their typical counterparts. So when we're talking about a K through 12 school, ultimately, we're talking small classrooms, maybe 6 to 10 children per classroom, and a site where they can have their own facilities and in special circumstances where the community can come visit them instead of our children always having to fit into the community where it's not always accessible. So our primary goal is to just bring something to Volusia County where our children that we serve with special needs and their families can integrate the community into the work that they do. So.
Thank you. Okay, we have questions for the applicant. Mr. Costa.
Yep, so this is in my backyard. And I don't have any objections to Easter seals. I certainly don't have any objections to the kind of programs that you guys run and the kind of programs that they actually ran there prior to you guys acquiring it. So I'm familiar with the system there. What I do have a concern about is that, are you both local to the area?
Yes.
So you know the intersection that we're talking about, and you know the events that are happening this particular weekend. Okay. What I don't want to see is an onslaught of code complaints a year from now, that the traffic, the biker noise, the bands going on all day long for either the week of Bike Week in March or the weekend in October, if you're not going into this knowing full well that that place currently exists and it's been there long before I even came to this area. That's my biggest challenge here. So if you could address that, that would be great.
I'd be happy to address that. So I'm a resident of New Smyrna Beach, and I've participated in programs at this property long before Easter Seals owned it. And I have to say, I want our kids to fit into the community, and that is part of our community. We had a meeting down there on Monday, and we had staff to show the property, and there were quite a few bikes coming by. And you know what? I think that's some of the charm of Daytona Beach, to be honest with you. As long as I'm the president and CEO, you won't have a code issue from me.
Then you've got an approval on my part.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay. All right, let's see, do we have any public participation? We do not. So we're going to close the floor for public participation. Over for commission discussion or a motion.
I have a quick question for staff before the motion's made.
Okay.
The approval for this special exception runs with the applicant or runs with the property?
With the property.
So there is a possibility that Easter Seals could sell this tomorrow to ABC charter school, and this could be a full-blown charter school, K through 12, with no limitations on students.
Public schools are allowed by right, not by special exception, so they could do that right now without going through your process.
Okay.
They would need to come back through our site plan process. So this group will move forward to site plan with their configuration. If someone were to purchase this property, they would have to come back through that process.
Do that process again? Okay. All right, thank you.
I'll be glad to make a motion.
Okay, Ms. Shelley?
Move that case number S-23-011 be approved, subject to the 6 staff conditions with the modification to condition number 2, that they will be able to be open 1 day a month until 8 p.m.
Second.
And also to Saturday.
Oh, change Monday through Saturday instead of Friday on that same condition.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And a second from Mr. Pedersen? Okay. Okay, I've got a motion on the floor to forward the special exception case number S-23-011 to the county council for the final action recommendation of approval with the staff recommended conditions with the modification with the 6 staff recommended conditions with the modification of number 2 to allow them to operate one time a month to 8 p.m. and also to change from Monday to Friday to Monday to Saturday. And a second from Mr. Patterson. Any discussion on the motion?
Mr.
Mr. Patterson.
I'm just really excited about this. As a former teacher and my background's in really childhood education, this is perfect. I know some children now that are over in Osceola County that are going for horses, and it's making a big difference, and I'm really glad to see this. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, that ends our items for today. Do we have any other public items?
No, sir.
Any staff comments?
Just a question for you. We were doing scheduling, and you have a December 21st PLDRC hearing. That is on a Thursday. The following Sunday is Christmas Eve. I just kind of wanted to take a poll and see if we were going to have a quorum, or if everybody already has plans for that week and will not be here. If you're going to be here, great, we'll keep it on that date. If not, we can adjust it to the 14th, the week before, or we can save our items for January. I just don't want to hold the meeting without a quorum.
I'll be present.
Yeah, me too. I will.
Okay, so we'll go as is.
Okay, we're just.
Okay. Perfect.
We'll have this Christmas spirit.
Can we have cookies at that meeting?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any commission comments?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Mr.
Can you see this on your screen? That I've requested to speak? You. Sure.
David Santiago.
Okay, that would be me, because I'm in this seat.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking. I think that's what she was referring to. She was hitting that button.
Getting it, but it
And
doesn't
you
work.
But it
for
didn't
me.
come up, because I haven't cleared my queue.
Just to clarify, we are having problems with our monitors. Someone's coming to fix them next
I got
week.
it now.
Yeah, because I know sometimes it's.
Just throw something at me.
Yeah, just speak
I
up.
won't be offended.
That's
Just
what we
take
all
that
do.
water bottle and say, hey, I want to talk.
But you do have that up on your screen, so if it's
I do have
working.
it there, but it did, nothing was there when she
was, okay.
pushing the
All right,
button.
that was my
Because
only-
I have not cleared my queue.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I guess if you hit it twice, you take it off.
Yeah, if I take it off once I've,
Yeah, it goes
request to
off,
speak
but-
that,
Yeah.
and then I can see the actual list too of
If
who
you'd
else
like
is-
for me to use that, I will.
I'm just looking at it as
And it may be
sometimes,
beneficial for us to start using that because I do regret not acknowledging you, but I had no idea that you did.
well, we all get tunnel vision. We start looking forward to everybody in front. and you're-
Especially with me moving, I try to, as you well know, I try to keep it going.
I think they should put a little electric shock.
I'll hit this, you want me to hit this
No,
duress button?
don't hit that one. No. That's okay. I'd like to get out of here.
Okay. One comment I'd like to make, and I know because I can't speak to Mr. Costa about this on a personal basis, so I have to do it in a public forum, but one of the things, and I realize on these CPAs and land development projects that come before us, and I know where you're coming from when you talk about the time and everything that goes into it and what kind of a setback it is to them. And I understand the personal property rights. But what I look at also is, because I've been affected by some of these projects. And what I look at also is adjacent property owners and the surrounding property owners and how it affects them also. I know that the developers put in a lot of money, a lot of time, and I appreciate that, but when they go into these situations, they ought to know that they're gonna be, that they're getting into the mud.
Oh, and I don't disagree with you. I mean, the overall site plan to me was well thought out. I think what one of the killers for them was that the multifamily component. I think that if that had been toned down some bit, they probably would have gotten a little more support.
Yep,
I think that the need is there for that shopping center. I think the corner, that intersection is ideal. Yes, there is traffic, but that's anywhere in this county, there you get the traffic issues. The circle is obviously being constructed, and their project is in conjunction with, which means that Circle K has got to be moved back regardless. So that's why I asked them about the phasing stage. And I gave them the opportunity to withdraw. And I think that when they go to council, they may have encountered the same resistance. I think that in general, in other words, I didn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, is my point. So the project was there, as I think that what their the killer was the multifamily component. Maybe smaller, 50 wide, single families would have been a little more palatable as opposed to the number of units they were trying to stick in there.
Well, it goes back to the transition component that I kept on
Right.
hitting on, is because you go through apartment housing, and the people out there have been dealing with this. I know for over 10 years, that's been a critical intersection for over 10 years, ever since I've been on this board. And every time we've gotten a staff report on the intersections and the future projects, that has always came up, as that 44 intersection there. And I will tell you this, these roundabouts, and I know Mr. Patterson likes them. I know people that avoid Orange Camp and Martin Luther King to this day, so they do not have to go to that roundabout.
I'm personally not a fan of roundabouts. I've navigated them here. I've navigated them in Orange Camp.
Well, I have
over in Sanford now. They're starting to use those, and I'm not convinced that is the solution, but that apparently is the way we're going. So as they all say, you got to get through, stub your toe for about 20, 30 years and realize, hey, let's rip it out, this ain't working, and we go back to square one. So.
Well, I agree, but I mean, I like it because I don't have to stop there anymore. But for the most part, I do know a lot of people that are trying to avoid it, and unfortunately, we have a lot of them that can't drive. And they get in there and start bumper carding.
Well, one thing I have against the one in Victoria Park is
fatal accidents has decreased.
Because of the speed.
But probably the more minor accidents have skyrocketed.
Yeah.
The thing I have against those kind of like the double lanes going around is the inside lane should not be able to cut across and turn right. The outside lane going around, I see, okay, they can make a right, but I saw a motorcycle almost get killed there probably 3 weeks ago. The inside lane cut all the way across and basically sideswiped this motorcycle.
I have a real problem with the signage. I think it really needs a lot of work to improve signage in the instance of these roundabouts.
Yeah.
I think they're very poorly marked. There's one on US 1 between Ormond and Buttnell that it's a fairly simple as far as how many lanes are feeding into it, but it's so confusing that I know where I'm going and I get confused. So somebody coming from out of town is really going to have an issue.
Okay.
Outside of roundabouts, one quick question. Do we have any update on the parking situation across the way? I know that
They're
today
paving as quickly as they can.
2026.
You will experience a little bit of a problem right now because all employees had to move out of that area as well, and so
yeah.
everyone's sharing a limited number of spaces.
Yes.
There is a parking garage down the way. It's not as close as you'd like it to be, but it's towards the DeLand courthouse, correct?
Yes. Yeah, it's Remiston. It's east here. It's a pretty good hike. I had my morning exercise this morning.
We all did.
Okay, do we have any other commission comments? Okay, press citizen comments. This meeting is adjourned.